Welcome back to Paul's Tech News. We are already a week into July. 2025 is already more than halfway over and I am out of beer, so we'll see if this episode can be relatively more focused and efficient. The big news in the tech world this week was the launch of NVIDIA's RTX 5050, which was unceremoniously dumped on the doorsteps of budget gamers like an unwanted baby with a $250 bill of sale attached. Radeon 9000 series GPUs are faster now thanks to a driver update, and the Stop Killing Games petition in the EU has surpassed 1 million signatures with no help from me at all. You're welcome, by the way, allowing us to desperately cling to something positive amidst the generalized chaos that has befallen 2025 thus far. I hope you're finding healthy ways to keep a cool head as the summer heat intensifies, but without further preamble, on with the tech news.
Excellent!
Today's video is brought to you by Lexar. Their SSDs are the ideal storage solution for your next build. The NQ780 is a balanced drive that combines performance with value, offering impressive PCIe Gen 4 speeds as well as a single-sided design, SLC cache, and intelligent power control. The NM1090 Pro features blazing fast PCIe Gen 5 read speeds up to 14,000 megabytes per second, twice as fast as PCIe Gen 4. The NM1090 Pro also has a dual DRAM plus SLC cache and a 6nm controller to minimize heat output even under sustained workloads. Both drives are available in capacities up to 4 terabytes and come with a 5-year warranty. For more on the Lexar NM1090 Pro and NQ780 SSDs, click the sponsor links in the video description. So like the other 8GB RTX 50 series GPUs that launched this year, the RTX 5050 debut was weird. There was no review program yet again, and even NVIDIA seemed confused about when the card would be available, with July and second half of July listed on the pre-launch landing pages, whose sudden appearance last week was really the only formal acknowledgement by NVIDIA that the cards were even coming to market. But on Tuesday, July 1st, the card sort of launched. New drivers went live, and RTX 5050 listings appeared at multiple retailers such as Newegg. But for multiple regions, including the US, these seemed to be placeholders. Cards are still out of stock, even as of today, with no expected date listed. So perhaps that second half of July note was accurate when it comes to when the 5050 will actually be available for purchase. The lack of a review program from NVIDIA meant that there was no embargo lift that opened the floodgates for dozens of reviews to go live all at once, but a few outlets did manage to obtain RTX 5050s for testing as the week progressed. eTechnics got a hold of a colorful iGame RTX 5050, and Tech PowerUp tested the Gigabyte RTX 5050 Gaming OC. Per Tech PowerUp's review, overall, the 5050 lands just shy of the RTX 4060's performance at 1080, also trailing the Arc B580 and 7600 XT 16GB, while outperforming the 7600, A770, and RTX 3060, with a pretty big bump up over the RTX 3050. Note that NVIDIA did not launch an RTX 4050 desktop GPU for last gen. At 1440 though, as well as 4K, the 5050 falls behind the Arc A770 and other GPUs with more VRAM like the RTX 3060, as memory usage increases at higher resolutions, which is a big reason why investing in a GPU with more memory is recommended if you're planning to game on a 1440 high refresh rate panel, for example. These relative performance results also compare Tech PowerUp's benchmarks to 5 cards that closely compete with the RTX 5050, showing specific titles where it performed better or worse than the Arc B580, the RTX 5060, 22.7% slower, the RTX 4060, 2.6% slower, the RTX 3060, 12.9% faster, and the RX 7600, 4.3% faster. eTechnics tested 10 games, plus 4 more with ray tracing, and found that while yes, the 5050 is definitely susceptible to out-of-VRAM problems, such as the notorious Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, even at 1080 where the 5050 hit 0 FPS, it is also not completely incapable of gaming and can achieve playable frame rates in the low to mid 100s at mostly 1080 medium settings. Ray tracing results give the RTX cards a boost versus AMD, of course, but the 5050 still trails the 4060 by 5% here. In terms of cost per frame though, not the MSRP, we're looking at the real world prices right now. The $250 list price places the 5050 in second place, surpassed in value only by the $300 RTX 5060, which is frustrating because value drives PC gaming hardware purchases, and Nvidia clearly has no incentive to provide more value at the entry level because the best 5050 alternative is another Nvidia product, the 5060, which still only has 8 gigs of VRAM, albeit GDDR7 instead of GDDR6. And despite semi-optimistic reports of 8GB GPUs not selling well, that's the retail DIY market at one retailer in the EU, Mindfactory, and the DIY market only represents about a small 10%-ish slice of overall gaming PCs. The majority of 5050s and 5060s will undoubtedly be sold in pre-builts to consumers who are less informed than this show's viewers, and that is how they'll eventually climb to the top of the Steam hardware survey, as so many GTX and RTX 50 and 60 class GPUs have done in the past. Speaking of semi-optimism, I am happy to report that despite me completely ignoring it, which was not intentional by the way, a consumer movement dubbed Stop Killing Games has achieved the 1 million signature quota to have its petition addressed by the European Commission, with another petition also surpassing 100,000 signatures for the UK. Specifically, the goal of the Stop Killing Games initiative, which was started by Ross Scott, is to require game developers to provide some means of continuing to play a game that has been purchased, even if the developer goes out of business or otherwise stops supporting it. Online connectivity requirements for games that need a server handshake are common as anti-piracy measures, but particularly for single-player titles, they can be frustrating for legitimate buyers. This is compounded when a game's servers get shut down, meaning the thing you paid for just goes away through no fault of your own. Imagine if your car just stopped working because Toyota went out of business, for example. Now that the signature threshold has been passed, there is a very strong chance that the European Commission will pass new law that will both protect consumer rights to retain video games that customers have purchased and advance preservation efforts massively, which would place the onus on game developers to comply and provide a means to keep playing a game, such as allowing third-party servers or disabling online DRM requirements. The petition is open until the end of July, so if you're located in the EU, feel free to keep piling on with more SIGs, UK too for that matter. More SIGs are better, and it will help deter accusations of signature spoofing that have come to light. And my apologies for not covering this earlier or last week, but better late than never. Speaking of the hour growing late, it is time to hasten the information flow with Tech Briefs. Do you own your face? How about your voice? The answer may have been obvious 20 years ago, but with AI's rapidly evolving ability to mimic an individual's image and vocal range, things have gotten murky. AI startups would prefer the status quo, where it's assumed that if you've ever posted an image of yourself on social media, it's open season to have that data hoovered up into myriad AI models that can then serve as digital copy machines to recreate you for the enjoyment and financial benefit of others. But good guy Denmark is saying no, with a proposed law that would give everyone default ownership of themselves, their body, their voice, and their facial features, a breakthrough concept that you'd think would have already been a thing, but no, you've got to call dibs on yourself these days, or the AI companies will say, mine. Hopefully, this goes through, and the rest of the EU and the world follow suit. So it turns out you can download more FPS, at least if you're an AMD Radeon RX 9000 series owner, as demonstrated by a thankfully sedentary Steve from Hardware Unboxed. The latest AMD Adrenalin 25.6.3 drivers provide a notable boost versus the older 25.3.1 version. 9% better performance at 1440, and while Nvidia's RTX 5070 Ti has also improved 2.5% with recent drivers, the 9070 XT is clearly ahead now, at least in this 16-game test suite. Now do note that the 4K performance is still about even between the two GPUs, and while some games improved by 20% or more, other games received no boost, so check your favorite titles or watch Steve's full video, which is linked in this video's description. With the cheapest 9070 XTs going for more than $100 less than the cheapest 5070 Ti's right now though, this matchup seems to heavily favor the RX 9070 XT. Now just imagine if it was actually selling for its $600 MSRP. Multiple leaks last weekend seem to indicate that Nvidia's 2025 GPU Gish Gallop will not end with the July launch of the RTX 5050. Per generally reliable hardware leaker Kopite7kimi, there are already super GPUs in the works, the RTX 5070 Super and 5070 Ti Super, which now form a trio alongside the 5080 Super that was leaked back in May. It's very likely that these cards will all use 3GB GDDR7 modules instead of 2GB, giving them each a 50% increase in VRAM, which bumps the 5070 Super up to 18GB and the other two up to 24GB. All three GPUs will increase TDP by 10 to 17% if these rumors are accurate, but the 5070 Super is the only one with a CUDA core boost, up by a modest 4%, while the 5080 Super gets slightly faster memory as well. Now, I'm not optimistic that these cards will offer good value, but at least the VRAM allocations will be slightly less insulting. Paying well over $1,000 for a 16GB 5080 was a lot to stomach. No official announcement or launch dates yet, but speculation is that we'll get a late 2025 holiday season debut or announcement, with the backup theory being January 2026 at CES. As you might be aware, PC hardware follows a familiar pricing trend over its lifespan. MSRP-ish pricing after launch, with a steady downward trend as the product ages and sales happen, followed by an upward spike when the product stops being manufactured. DDR4 has apparently hit that upward spike inflection point, so take note, AM4 users. If your 16GB or, God forbid, 8GB setup isn't cutting it, you might want to upgrade sooner rather than later. Per TrendForce, DDR4 prices have nearly tripled in the past couple months, with a 100% increase just in June, as major manufacturers like Nanya, Samsung, and Micron scale back or discontinue production. Tariffs and other influences on global trade are further impacting supply, but given the widespread use of DDR4, there should be options on the used market at least for a long time still. And on the bright side, DDR5 prices have continued to improve, so if last-gen memory pricing saps your budget build's value, you could always opt for that platform upgrade that you've been putting off. But it's time that I stop putting off the end of the show. So there you have it, guys. Tech news for the week, and if you liked it, click that like button or leave me a comment down below. While you're down there, all of the articles I talked about today are linked in the video's description if you're interested, and you can also check out my store at paulshardware.net for high-quality merchandise, t-shirts, hoodies, beer sets, and more. Subscribing to my channel is always a good call too. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you next week.